Now, Erie's premier podcast. News about music, health, and what's happening. It's Breakfast with Nat the Hat in the 814. Sponsored by Erie Insurance.
Well, the heat is on in the 814. Welcome to podcast number 34, Faith and Service, the Catholic Charities podcast. I welcome Chief Executive Officer of Catholic Charities Counseling and Adoption Services, Dr. Don Coburn-Joy, and also the Director of the Office of Social Service and Impact at Catholic Charities of the Diocese of Erie, Diane Gallagher, to this show this morning. Thank you both for joining me on Breakfast with Nat the Hat in the 814. It's nice to have you. Dawn, it's really nice to see you. It has been a long time. We had both of our children going to the Cathedral Center at the same time.
We did.
So, and I don't think I've seen you much since then.
Maybe in passing, yeah.
Sure. Tell me about you. What's been going on with you?
Well, I was very thrilled to be offered this position last March. Before that, I had spent quite a bit of time at Gannon University in their nursing department in higher academic leadership roles.
Wow.
And I had left there, and I was completely content and wasn't really looking for another opportunity. And just these are how these things happen.
Yes.
So I've been there since last March, going on 15 months now, and we're just having the time of our lives.
And, you know, it's in God's plan.
It is.
Definitely so. Now, Diane, how long have you been in the 814?
Well, I've lived here all my life,
Good.
on and off.
On and off, okay.
Went to school at Notre Dame out of town and lived in Chicago a little bit, but I lived in Akron for a little bit. But I ended up back here, and this is where I've raised my family. And I used to be in youth ministry and religious education, also Catholic education in different schools before I was married. Then I got married and was a stay-at-home mom with my 7 kids. And
Whoa,
then-
let's back up. You have 7.
I do.
Tell me about your 7. Boys, girls, ages?
A mixture. I have
That's
3
awesome.
boys on top and then 4 girls. Yeah, my oldest is 24 and my youngest just turned 13.
Wow.
Busy. Well, my mother had 8. There were 7 girls and 1 boy in my
see?
family. So when somebody talks about a large family, I want to know more.
Yeah, and I grew up, I have 5 siblings and I loved it. So I always knew I wanted,
7.
yeah.
What parish are you at?
We're at St. Joe's Bread of Life, but we also do a lot at Our Lady of Peace. That's where my brother's the pastor, so.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of, if we can get off target here for a moment and talk about Father Larry, who happens to be one of my favorites
Aw.
in the whole wide world, is going to Mount Carmel and St. Luke's. He's got a new position.
Yes, he does.
And I know they're going to have a big hoopla for him over there at St. Joe's.
Yeah.
But how long was he? He was there a long time.
22 years.
A
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah, we've been friends for a long, long time, and he actually played a big role in my getting deeper into my faith, a combination of events in my life, and then he really played a big role. So
I call him the celebrity priest of EWTN. I mean, he really is fantastic. And going back to my son Dylan's high school days, I was out in the West County, so we were at St. John's, the Evangelist in Girard. And every month, I would say, you need a shot of Father Larry. We're going into town so you can get your shot of Father Larry. We both loved him so much. And that is my mother's parish, Mount Carmel.
Oh, okay.
So, and I've been taking her there. She'll be 91. So she's like, what is this Father Larry all about? I said, oh, I can't wait till he introduces himself. But that's a big change. Who's
is.
going to your St. Joe's Parish then?
Father Steve Schreiber, which we're very excited about that too, because I've known him. He was in seminary in Rome with my brother. He's an awesome guy, and he's down in Warren right now. So that's exciting too. It's a lot of change. We're praying for all our priests, and all the parishioners who are struggling with the changes.
And the other thing is too, we are praying for more
definitely
more men to become involved. And because, as we know, every year it just decreases, and there will probably be more changes, which saddens me, saddens all of us.
Yeah.
So let's get back to you, Dawn. Let's talk about your counseling services over at Catholic Charities.
Well, let me start by, I always think it's fascinating to start with the history of our agency.
Perfect.
And because it does lead into the conversation about counseling. In 1953, on Christmas Eve, two Sisters of St. Joseph started what was then called, I believe, Catholic Social Services. And it wasn't a formal social service agency or anything. It was just two nuns that got together and had a great idea to offer family counseling. And so they started, and they then went off and got their MSWs, so they were more, ability to be licensed. And then the agency became licensed. But they started out doing family counseling, primarily focusing on families who wanted to have children and couldn't, or were presented perhaps with the opportunity for a child and that perplexed them. And that then led into the work that they started with adoption. And so for many years, those were the two main things. Family counseling, which basically was, another name for mental health counseling in the day.
Yes.
And then adoption services. And for many years, the agency was located in what was St. Joe's Home, which is now St. Joseph's Apartments, which I remember being around when I went to Villa Maria College, because I'm a Villa girl. In 1970, there was fortunately not a need to have a big orphanage anymore because the complexion of adoption changed. There weren't babies left on doorsteps anymore. And they closed the orphanage, and the agency then moved to its present location at 329 West 10th. But in between that and I'm missing a few pieces. They continued doing the mental health counseling. They continued doing the family counseling. They moved the agency then in 1970. They continued doing adoption work. And then in the early 80s, when they started doing international adoptions, they started to get into refugee resettlement services, which is a very large part of what we do today and is kind of a hidden fact because it's not in our name. You see counseling and adoption services, but so that's something that we're trying to address. And so that part of our business actually is located over at the former St. Stan School. And so right now, the work that we do is mental health counseling, a large amount of substance abuse counseling. The adoption work we do is very focused on permanency adoption, so getting kids out of foster care, which truly is God's work when I hear some of the stories. And then, of course, refugee resettlement. We have to date brought in almost 400 new refugee
I was going to say
this year alone.
In 1 year.
Mm-hmm. Wow. It is almost double of what we did last year.
I love the fact that you talk about the Sisters of St. Joseph because many of our sisters in this community started great things and continue to do great things in our community. So these counseling services, I'm curious, was there a spike in these services since COVID?
Sort of, yes. I would definitely say that there has been pretty much on the substance abuse side, sadly.
There's a lot going on there,
yes.
too.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of approaches are used during these counseling sessions?
So we are what's called a level 1 outpatient facility, which is sort of the lowest, and by lowest level, I don't mean anything negative, but the sort of basic, we don't do medication management. We're doing pure counseling, pure,
I love that.
Talking to people and helping them with their struggles. And so on the substance abuse side, we deal with all sorts of addictions. And we have 2 counselors now that are pursuing getting a gambling addiction certification, which is a whole nother area, which, believe it or not, is a very rare specialty in Erie, but very needed.
Yes.
And then on the mental health side, we deal with men, women, children from the age of 12 up through a whole variety of issues, anxiety, depression, adjustment disorder, all of those things.
And there's so much more of that today.
Yes.
I've done several addiction podcasts, and gambling is one of those addictions. And we have a casino that...
We have a casino, and we have all of these grocery stores that have popped up with the games in the back.
With the skilled games, yes. So, how do you ensure that the counseling that's going on aligns with our Catholic teachings and principles?
I think it goes back to Catholic social justice teaching, dignity and respect as being one of them. And that is I would say, the mantra that our counselors approach. My office is actually on the second floor where all the counselors are. So I see the coming and going. And I see them with total 100% acceptance of wherever that person is coming from, whatever that person represents. And there's no fear, there's no implicit bias. It's just, it's really love in action.
I love I've always used the phrase meditate, not medicate. You know what I mean? And finding the spirit that you need in order to get through these addictions and these problems and depression. And as we can tell, I mean, with all this social media that we have now, that they're talking about putting some type of like labeling on at this time. My children, our children did get into it a bit, but now, Diane, tell me, how does it work with all the children that you have?
As far as social media
Yes.
influence, it's a constant struggle.
I was going to
think.
say it's got to be a battle.
Yeah, because even with phones, our big rule in our house is 8th grade graduation is when you get your iPhone, But when we first did that for my boys, yes, that was a sacrifice for them, but there were quite a few who didn't. Now, I mean, my kids are usually the only one or maybe one or two others who don't have phones by that time. So it's really interesting because they feel cut off socially then. So maybe they'll have an iPad and text and things. But so even in that way, and then the phone, of course, leads to all the other social media. So, we have rules about, TikTok, how old they have to be when they get in, can get that account and different things like that. But they're so exposed at their friends' houses, everywhere
Right.
they go. So even if we have strict rules, I know there's still ways they can get around
Dawn,
it.
isn't it great that we have 30
I was
somethings?
just thinking, yes, we escaped this.
I
Yes,
know.
absolutely. When someone would like to start counseling sessions with Catholic Charities Counseling Services, how do they go about doing that, Dawn?
It's a matter of a phone call, or we have a website where you can put in a request and someone will get back to you in the same business day.
Are you all housed down at St. Stan's at this point?
St. Stan's is where the refugee resettlement services are.
Okay.
We are housed at 329 West 10th, and that's where the counseling services are.
Got it.
And another thing about our counseling services is we also offer a telehealth option, which has been really helpful for people who work. They can't necessarily make time during their day to attend a counseling session. So we can be very flexible about that too, and it's all, of course, very private and secure. So that's kind of a example of where technology is working for us.
So there you go. Do you have any success stories that you can tell us about?
I don't
when it
think
comes
I
to
do that I
counseling?
can tell you about.
Right,
because
Because of
just
HIPAA.
the confidentiality.
Right.
But I do know, I can speak in generalities about the fact that I have seen with the passion that these folks are putting into this, we don't have a lot of no-shows. People come sometimes because maybe they're court mandated to come, or maybe they know that they need to come, but then they stay because they're really getting something out of it.
That's great. I welcome Chief Executive Officer of Catholic Charities Counseling and Adoption Services, Dr. Dawn Coburn-Joy, and Director of the Office of Social Service and Impact at Catholic Charities of the Diocese of Erie, Diane Gallagher, to the show. Let's move on to adoption services. I'm very interested in learning about the process for adoption through Catholic Charities.
So right now, the services or the support that we offer, we are a subcontractor for Bethesda Children's Services. And so we get our referrals from them. And so that might be a matter of assessing a family to be a foster family, or assessing a family that wants to adopt someone out of a foster family into a permanency kind of role. The follow-up that goes along with that, it's very intense. It's not just a one and done, like, oh, I'm going to Nat's house. Yeah, you look good.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
What are the eligibility requirements for prospective adoptive parents?
That will vary, and I probably am not well versed enough to know that. I mean, I just to know that it varies. But the important thing to keep in mind is it is a very lengthy process. They're very, not just us, anyone in this realm, in adoption realm, is very cautious about making sure it's a good fit, that it's going to be successful. And some of the children that have been in foster care, or maybe they're not in foster care, they're in shelters, they're in detention centers, have had rough lives. And so they have all of the, adjustment issues that go along with that, and make them sometimes unlovable, even though they want to be loved. So it's kind of working through that and helping them to realize, that sort of how they can become more social, and also working with the foster families or adoptive families to, kind of open their eyes to what the possibilities are.
Right.
But it doesn't stop there. There's a kind of a whole 6-month follow-up process, and even after that,
Beyond.
being recertified.
Is there any education or training programs that are available for those that are interested in adoption, or
Well, yes.
do they do? Yep.
We don't do them, but yes, there's a myriad of resources. And again, I'm sure that they would be kind of required to make sure that people kind of knew what they were getting into.
Right. So how do you match children with adoptive families? I mean, it's just this.
So my understanding of how it works is, so say you were interested in looking at a child that's in foster care or that's in detention. Families come to us and they say, I want a boy or a girl, I want this age group. They come with those requirements, and we try to work with those requirements. And sometimes, we may point out where there's areas that they could be flexible.
Right.
And that works sometimes, and then sometimes it doesn't.
Well, I love the fact that parents out there that take the time to go through this lengthy process to adopt a child.
What amazes me, too, is we have many permanent families that have taken kids from foster care that have more than one, that they are kind of Diane Gallaghers of that world. I know of one family recently that I learned about, and they are on their 5th child out of foster care and into permanency.
Is there any help? Because I know there's that gap when they turn 18 and they don't have to be in foster care anymore. Is there something that's done with Catholic Charities to fill that gap?
Not with us per se,
Okay.
but I'm very aware of services in this community where, in fact, Yuma just got a very large grant to try to fill that gap for kids that had aged out of foster care or they wouldn't age out of a permanent situation, but aged out of foster care, and they
Right.
had no place to go. And I know Yuma got a very big grant to prevent them from becoming homeless, basically.
I'm glad to hear that. What legal steps are involved? I mean, do you have your own legal team that you work with during that?
No, we don't get involved in that. We're the report writers. We're the ones providing any legal entities that are involved with the reports. We're sort of like, they are the experts.
Right.
And so they're writing the report and they're making the recommendations, and then it's up to the courts and the legal processes.
I was going to say, how long does the process take?
It depends, but
Right.
it's not overnight by any means. I'm aware of one young lady that I know our director of adoption has been working with that has really taken a very special interest, and this poor child has been moved so many times, and so that's since last March.
Wow.
And she's still not in a permanent situation.
I was going to ask you, are there any success stories that we can talk about with the adoption process?
I actually do know of one. Most recently, a Mennonite family. This is the one I was talking about before. Just successfully, it was more of an adoption actually. Brought a child into their family, and that is they have a total of 5 children now that they've adopted. That one wasn't a foster care situation, but And when Danelle Stone, who's our director of adoption, was providing the on-site observations and services, went to visit the home. He had been nonverbal, he was 4 years old, and pretty much withdrawn. And when she went back for the first home visit, which is like within 30 days, if even that, it's a very short interval, he presented his goat, his baby goat, and thought it would be a great thing for Danelle to bring the goat back to the office. And she texted me, "I'm not really a farm girl," but she took a picture of him, and she'll if she hears this podcast, she'll probably have a big giggle out of it. So yes, there are many moments of
success
mirth
stories
and many success stories, and that was definitely a win for him as well as the siblings that he's joining, and they've welcomed him into their home.
Right. I've got to go back to the 400 immigrants in the last year. What have they been coming in buses, or
No.
how does all
So
that work?
We are a contractee of the United States Council of Catholic Bishops.
Okay.
So the federal government provides funding to the United States Council of Catholic Bishops. They in turn provide us the funding. So that's what gives us the resources. We get notified through the federal government, through USCCB. It's a big organization.
Yes.
Of our arrivals, they're called. So we might get a notice today of an arrival next week, family of 5, what country they're coming from, what their language ability is it their own language, do they speak any English, do they have any special needs, any healthcare concerns. We meet them at the airport. They all come on the plane, and it's usually that 11 o'clock flight.
Okay.
And they have nothing. They have one bag of clothing, and we have for them a fully furnished apartment with food in the refrigerator, a hot meal for them.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And then within the next business day, a case manager, who usually is the one that meets them at the airport, then steps in and starts them down their path. The goal is sustainability. The goal is that they can make their rent, that they get a job, or that the kids get into school, they get the health care they need, and all of that happens.
And that is all under your umbrella.
Yes. And then there's a couple of different programs under that. That one is called Reception and Placement. We receive them and we place them.
Right.
And then after that, they could be eligible for other programs that deal with case management or employment or just all sorts of different things. And so our involvement with them can be up to, the better part of a year. And we've had a lot of success stories there. The former director of our refugee resettlements was a gentleman by the name of Nandu Subedi, was a refugee himself, came up through Catholic Charities, did every single job at Catholic Charities until he became the director, and just recently stepped down because his family owned a business that he was really feeling pressured that he needed to join, and that was kind of a cultural expectation for him.
Wow.
We have quite a few people that work for us that were refugees themselves.
I'm going to tell you, last year, I ended up working with a gentleman who was a refugee himself. And, of course, I didn't know his background. And I'm in the marketing end of where I work. So I was taking his picture to put him on our website. And I sat down with him, and he tells me this story. Do you remember those planes, Natalie, that were over in Afghanistan? That was part of my getting out with my family, with one bag. I mean, just the entire story, and how our team came together, too, to make sure that he had all the comforts of home, and he had 3 children, and it was just so moving. And he's like, I was on the plane where you see people were hanging off the plane trying to get on. So he's doing very well. Him and his family moved to Virginia. They had other family members that were placed in Virginia. So he ended up leaving, but it certainly was an eye-opener.
The other thing that strikes me that I kind of learned from my work with Nandu before he left is, and he tells this story from personal experience, he was a secondary teacher in Nepal, history teacher. I can't remember what subject, but, college educated. And he said, really, what you need to keep in mind is when they come here, when our clients come here, USA starts for you start over or you start again.
You start again.
And so, and very often that's a hard transition because so many do come to us with advanced education and very specialized skills. And they may not have the English language skills, but that's a big part of what we do is we have English as a second language classes, we have cultural orientation classes, and in addition to the healthcare in the schools and all of that, to really help people adjust and then finding them jobs. And we've been, Erie is a very welcoming city when it comes to refugee resettlement.
That's good to know. And that's our Catholic values at work.
And
is helping
the mayor
those.
is extremely, supportive because it's good for the city as well.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Dawn. You really opened our eyes to all the things that are going on with the Catholic Charities counseling and adoptive services.
Thank you.
Very good stuff. So I'm going to head over to the mother of 7. And we're going to talk to Diane. And Diane, tell us about the mission at Catholic Charities.
That's a great question. First, I just want to make a comment because one thing that people frequently get confused is Dawn's agency and the one that I'm part of.
Sure.
Because it's shortened to Catholic Charities.
Yes. So, yes, they're Catholic Charities Counseling Adoption. They've been here longer. But we are Catholic Charities, and Bishop Troutman was the one who first, in the early 90s,
So to differentiate, I call them the mothership.
Oh, you're the mothership.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're the mothership, and we're CCCAS.
Gotcha. Well, I know there is a map. Are you in 13 counties?
is exactly. Yeah. So our mission, we actually just wrote a new mission statement.
Nice. I can't wait to hear
Yeah,
it.
so the board just approved it. As Catholic Charities of the Diocese of Erie, we are witnesses and servants of Jesus Christ, consistent with the teachings of the Catholic Church. This is hysterical because this is the old one. I mean, we still believe it, but I
Right.
even made sure on my brochure that I had the new one. But anyway, I'll keep reading it because it's beautiful. We provide healthcare, social, and pastoral services for those in need, regardless of faith. Catholic Charities is committed to the sacredness of human life and the betterment of society. So I still finish that because I still think that's what we're about. It's just worded differently now. So I'm sorry I
I
grabbed an
wanted to
old
interject
brochure.
too and say, even
Right.
though our main office is here, we also have offices and services in many of the 13 counties.
That you service
Yes.
as well, Diane.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we're up at, our location is up at St. Mark's Catholic Center across
Yes.
from Mercier's Prep. Yeah. And, but we have, if you count us as one of the agencies, there are 8. So we have 3 in Erie, which would be Catholic Charities Counseling and Adoption, St. Martin Center, and then our agency, Catholic Charities. And then we have Good Samaritan Center, which is a homeless shelter in Clearfield, Christ the King Manor, which is in, Du Bois. Yeah, that's in Du Bois. And that is a continuing care retirement community. And then we also have another one of those in Hermitage, St. John the 23rd. And then we have a social service agency in Farrell, Prince of Peace, and a thrift store and food bank. They also provide emergency assistance in Oil City, St. Elizabeth Center.
So you definitely have your footprint
Yes.
in most of what would we call Northwest Pennsylvania.
Yeah. So, I mean, and these are all affiliate agencies. They're their own entities, they have their own boards of director and presidents and all of that. But, we're like, I don't know if we're the mothership quite, but
I love the sound of mothership.
but that is a funny title.
The mothership. I wanted to say that I was over in your building in a conversation with the Catholic Foundation, which is housed there as well.
Yes.
I want to tell you how lovely I think it was on the 3rd floor where all the missionaries gather, or there's a special space. I don't know if they're still doing masses there or not.
Yes, the chapel.
The chapel
for the
is
seminarians.
It is beautiful. So
Yes.
the seminarians are around there too, correct?
They are. They live on the top floor.
Oh, they're on the top.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that used to be entirely a seminary, and And then eventually, as the numbers dwindled, they ended up, now the seminarians reside on the top floor.
The top floor.
Yeah.
How many people does Catholic Charities serve annually?
Oh,
Do you have
gosh.
some ideas of?
Of impact?
Yes.
Well-
would love to hear that.
Well, I haven't totaled them all up, but, I would say it's got to be, when you look at our 2023 impact report, it's close to 60,000. So, we had 41,000, for example, would have been nourished through the food pantry, soup kitchens, and dining programs in our different agencies. That's probably the biggest number. And then 13,000 received clothing and furniture assistance. And then, from there. So it really is a big impact. And I think what's cool about working up in the office where I work, people hear that title and say, Director of the Office of Social Service and Impact. That's a long name.
Yeah.
What exactly do you do?
Right.
Because we are not direct service agency, so we're administrative offices, but my office, a big part of it, I receive phone calls from people looking for assistance. So what I really try to do is stay very knowledgeable about
Right.
what's available in the different counties, so that I'm not sending them on a wild goose chase. I really try hard to stay up on who has funding, what are reliable numbers to call, what should I not recommend, because I want these people to receive the assistance they need. So, and another thing I'm able to do, which I love, is listen. And sacred listening for me has really been a big focus, and personally.
And that's important.
And so taking
important.
it into my job, because I don't get to meet with them face to face, right? So I'm on the phone with them. But I've had people sobbing because they have nowhere to live. They're living in an elevator, an elevator shaft. I've had numerous different people calling me with very extreme circumstances, and they're just devastated and don't know where to go and at a complete loss. And they see the word charity in our name.
And Catholic.
Right.
And Catholic.
Right.
So they call, and I'd always, oh my gosh, the first couple weeks I was working, it broke my heart because I'm like,
I'm
I
sure.
don't like that I can't say to them, oh, here's $500. You
Right.
know, I had someone call and say, we need Christmas gifts. We missed all the Christmas sign up deadlines and we have 5 kids. I literally wanted to go buy them gifts. And my executive director, Erin Tubbs, was like, oh, that's so nice of you, but we can't do that.
Right.
Like, that's not what we do.
But Diane, I can tell how passionate you are.
Yes.
And I know this was a new role for you. I think
Yes.
last December is when
Yeah.
when you signed on. But I can just tell and you listen. And that's the most important thing to do when somebody is hurting or in need or is living on the streets or can't find work and they're hungry. They need clothes. They need all those things
And
that are
sometimes-
Catholic values.
Right.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's
Yes.
the very smallest gesture, too. So I have a little anecdote to share. Yesterday, I came downstairs, and there was a woman sitting in our waiting room, and I always say, have you been helped? Just to make sure. And I could tell immediately that she probably had some sort of intellectual disability. But she said that she was there because St. Peter sent her over. She wondered if we could help her. She needed money to get to her mother's funeral in Jamestown. And she kind of mumbled the amount of money. I didn't hear her. And I was worried because right now, normally we have a little money for financial assistance, but we don't right now. So I was like, oh, dear. The same situation that Diane's and you just want to help. And I said, tell me how much you need. She said, $13. I said, oh, we can help with that.
Oh.
So I just kind of went into where we've got a little extra cash, and I handed her a 20. And I said, I know this is more than you asked for, but I want you to take it, because I could tell she was going to kind of fight me. And she was so appreciative. And she said, now I can get a cold drink. And I was just like, oh.
Yes. Very important. So how does the Catholic faith inform and inspire your organization's work?
Oh, I mean, so for me personally, everything,
Mhm.
but I would say the same for our organization. I can confidently say that. I mean, our whole goal is to be the hands and feet of Jesus,
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, even though, again, we're not direct service providers, there's different ways that we can do that, And my colleague, Liz Slaby, is the director of the Office of Social Justice and Life. So she does a lot of, education and teaching people about Catholic social teaching, going to parishes and schools. And she also does work for, she gets out there at the March for Life. And right now, she and Aaron are in Harrisburg at the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference because it's their lobby day. And so, they're advocating for the things that we as Catholics would want to stand up for, So I think our office is sort of divided based on the 2 feet of love in action. Use that.
That's what I was
action.
going to ask you, because when I popped onto the website to get some more information about your organization, and I saw the 2 feet. Tell me about those 2 feet.
Yeah, it's really cool because it's the whole idea, again, being Christ's hands and feet and not just saying the words, but actually putting your beliefs into practice. And so the 2 feet are basically social justice is the 1 foot and charitable works is the other foot. And it's the idea that if you don't have both, you're sort of hopping along. You're not going to get as far and for as long,
Right.
But when both feet work together. So Liz and I collaborate a lot. There's a lot of things that overlap between both. We're both on the home team, and, she's the long-term solution girl and I'm the short-term assistance. So do you have a question?
No, I was interested when you said about the team.
Yes.
How many people are on the team?
On the home team?
Yes.
Oh, gosh, I don't even know. I wish Colleen Hammond was here right now to talk about that.
Does that include volunteers too?
Oh, yeah. This is all, a lot of them are people that work for agencies and things like that. Definitely includes volunteers, people with lived experience, really trying to come up with, concrete solutions to help fill the gaps, especially in the area of homelessness in Erie, So it's been very exciting to go to those conversations. Again, we want to do stuff. We come away from, what can we do? What can we do? But we're in a big year of gathering research. We've been meeting with so many different agency directors and trying to figure out what gaps do you see, especially with homelessness in
Well,
Erie.
that is. And I've had several different organizations on, and even Infinite Erie.
Oh, yeah.
I had their team on to talk about homelessness because we are located here downtown. So I know every time I walk out the door here and what I see. So I believe there are plans in place. I am hoping that we can get through the rhetoric and just get things done, right? Because that's what ends up happening. We all have conversations about it. We know it's a problem. We know there are things going on, and we're all trying to help. But we've got to get through all that and know that we've got to hit the ground running and help these people because there are so many of them right now.
Yeah.
It's really a hidden. It's a hidden issue in Erie because we don't see. It's not like a big city where, homelessness is very evident in your face.
Right.
But it's huge.
And I was, and this was in the winter months. I am driving up the Bayfront, and I probably got to 15th, 16th and Bayfront or whatever. And off to my right, I could see there was a homeless tent city.
I was just
and I
gonna mention
saw that only because there was no leaves on the trees. So I'm sure
there's more of those.
there's more of those that we don't see. But I drove by, I swung back around to look again, and I've had some conversations with several different people about this area, and I'm sure they're all in that area again now. I don't know how many of them would be able to survive in the cold in the winter months. But to see that was just heartbreaking.
That's
right?
the exact word I was going to use.
Yes.
It's heartbreaking. Yeah.
Do you ever collaborate with any other faith-based or secular organizations?
Oh, that's one thing we're excited about. So my position was just created in June. And then the person they first hired had to leave for family reasons. And so I took over in December. But they just went through a big restructuring in my office. And they created this position because they wanted someone to be able to spend more time on being the director of social service, you know,
Right.
and really addressing not just receiving phone calls and sort of passing people off, you know, but to really take time. And so one of the jobs I have is to go around and meet as many people in all the different social service agencies as I can. Number one, so that I can give the best resources to my callers as possible, but also to figure out ways that we can collaborate, you know. So I'll give you a small little example.
That is so important.
Yes.
Collaboration is so important. I'd love to hear that example, Diane.
Yeah, no, and we totally are like, we don't want to duplicate services, you know, but we want to look and see where are their gaps, and then be realistic, because let's face it, I can't go build a building, you know, for as much as I'd love to. I don't have the funds to do that.
Right.
So what are some realistic things we can do, you know? And now this is a pretty small one, but right away when I came in December, we got a call for someone looking for a Christmas meal. And I just assumed there would be one. And I'm researching and I'm reaching out to places, and I go and talk to Aaron, and no one knows of a Christmas meal. There's tons of things that happen before Christmas Day, parties and dinners
Yes.
and events. But on Christmas Day, you know, the person who called was by themselves and wanted to know where, you know, they could
get a
go.
meal.
So we right away said, seriously? We have no place on Christmas Day that provides a meal? I end up finding out that at the upper room, a group of volunteers, so it's not an upper room sponsored event, it's like a group of
Volunteers. I've had the upper room on, so I definitely know.
Yes. So this group comes and does this meal. Well, I called them and I said, hey, you know, is there a way we can support you and maybe get more people to be able to attend, or maybe have so more people could hear about it, you know?
Yes.
And so so this year we are helping with some of those things. You know, we're going to try to promote it for them and provide blessing bags for the guests, and you know, the Sisters of the Work are going to go and be a spiritual presence. So it was a great conversation, and I was really impressed by all they do. But so we're starting small.
I love it.
But then we have all
love it.
sorts of ideas. We're brainstorming, we're praying about it, and asking God to really show us, like, what are the initiatives that we can practically take to help, and then sustain.
Right.
You know, so.
Can you share any stories of your own spiritual growth and deepened faith that have resulted from being in this position?
Yeah, so being in youth ministry and teaching, you know, Catholic education, which I loved, but it was very much like the evangelization side of my faith.
Yes, yes.
And I would always teach the kids about the works of mercy and tell them and, you know, and I would be in charge of service hours and things, so I'd take them on some, you know, service projects. But this job is just totally focused on the spiritual and corporal works of mercy. And I just have been loving that, because I felt like that was an area I did need to grow, you know, and it's made me so much more aware. I can't drive by somebody on the street now.
I get it.
And I still am trying to figure out how, you know, I want to go get my group of $5 McDonald's gift cards and prayer cards, that every time I see someone, I can at least do that, you know. But yeah, it's made me so much more aware. Definitely.
Yes. And you know, there are people that I know that make little bags of toothpaste and a toothbrush and certain things that they need. And then when they see them out onto the streets, they pass those out too.
Yeah,
So-
my daughters.
I think there's one thing that distinguishes us in terms of a mental health counseling outpatient center that struck me when Diane was talking. We were just talking about this today. So we have many clients who either can't afford or don't have a means of transportation to get to us. So we buy them bus passes.
Nice.
And so it's not just, you know, coming to an office to get mental health counseling. It is, I hesitate to use the word case management, but it's a bit of that. It's very holistic. There's bus passes from time to time when we have the resources, especially around Christmas time. We had a gentleman who was a single dad of 4 kids. We had a couple extra gift cards, and we gave them out. We have an idea to create an incentive program for people that successfully, you know, kind of get through the program.
Right.
So I think that that's what makes us different. Maybe other agencies do that as well, but I think we're always looking at the whole person. And also the other thing that strikes me as us being different is we won't turn anyone away for inability to pay. And that's a hard thing sometimes.
Yes.
That's a
struggle.
huge barrier for people.
It's a huge barrier, but it's also a huge, always walking in two paths in terms of trying to keep the financial viability of the agency too.
So, Dawn, I'm going to ask you, what inspires you personally in your work? Do you have any? I know that you've just started all over again too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I think,
was it? Did you
think when
feel it as a calling?
It was the weirdest thing. I was not looking for this. The search committee reached out and said, "Would you be interested in talking to us?" I was like, "Sure, why not?" And then I just got kind of roped in. And I really didn't.
do.
I thought, what am I doing? And then even when I went for my in-person interview, it's in an old house. It needs a lot of work. We moved in 1970, and nothing much has been done since then. But it was really in disrepair. And I looked around and I thought, dear Lord, what am I doing here?
Right.
But still, I persisted. What inspires me is I am my office is on the floor where we're seeing clients. And to hear the laughter and to hear the interchange between the counselors and the clients, and then to hear these stories from Danelle and the other adoptive workers, permanency workers, about, today was a success story. Yesterday might not have been. It was very frustrating. Maybe the child that they were working with got shipped to Hazleton, PA, and there wasn't much they could do about it. So that's what keeps me going every day. I never really have a bad day.
Well, let's talk about volunteers. I know, what roles do volunteers play in your organization?
Dawn can probably, the refugee resettlement is a big one. We always encourage people to reach out to us, to Catholic Charities, because of the different agencies we're connected with.
Right.
We love to support those affiliate agencies. And so, but refugee
resettlement has a very large volunteer contingent that we rely on. We would be lost without them. Those are the people that go to these apartments and clean them and get them set up with the furniture and get the food and put it in the refrigerator. Those are the volunteers that help out with English as second language, which help out with getting people to health appointments. There's always a staff member with, but we have some volunteers that have been helpful in getting people to jobs. So we would be lost without that group, and it's a pretty large group.
How about funding? Let's talk about the money.
So that's part of my office.
I was going to ask, is CSA part when we give money yearly to the CSA program? Is that part of where that money comes from to ignite everything that you're doing?
Yeah. So some of that. We have a grant process. So again, we have the 7 affiliates. So we have money that we make through our gala. We have, and so the monies
push
we
the
make.
Bingo, push.
So the monies that we get go toward, a large amount goes toward grants toward those agencies.
Right.
So we do that twice a year. And then we also have emergency grants available. So, like we just had an agency reach out for that, because they wanted to be able to be helping with something that they ran out of funding for. So, that's an absolute way that we support too. Okay. So we always are available. If they come into a case where they're like, oh my gosh, this is a legit case, but we just can't help, we will support that.
And how about Erie Gives?
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
That's a big one. August 13th.
Yeah.
So our listeners can help ignite your programs.
Yes.
By giving on that day, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And obviously giving to Catholic Charities Counseling and Adoption Services will completely go toward your program and all of that. Ours will be dispersed through the agencies. But I've been telling my friends lately, I'm like, I had no idea all the great things that Catholic Charities does, and I'm like, we need to support this because so many people are being helped with their services,
And Erie Gives, last year we raised over $8 million. Talk about a great community.
Yes.
Think about that.
Yeah.
So our listeners, I need them to know what your organizations are doing.
Yeah.
So they can press some buttons on August 13th. for
That's
you.
Our
right.
signs are on the lawn.
Yeah. And I do want to just add, too, because St. Martin Center is one of our affiliates, that they have a great need for volunteers, too, you know, because they have
Sure.
their food pantry and they heavily rely, and their Shining Stars Christmas program.
Right.
Yeah.
I have gone in to the pantry over there.
Yeah.
And the people that are running that organization are fabulous.
Yeah.
Great people,
Mm-hmm.
caring individuals. You know, and then they take care of the littles with schooling and things of that
The
nature.
Early Learning Center, yeah.
So that's St. Martin's, so one of your agencies.
Yeah.
Well, you know, true Christian charity is more than a duty. It is a reflection of our faith and a testament to the love of God that we are called to share. So we are called to love our neighbors as ourselves, to extend our hands to those in need, and to show compassion and mercy for all. This is just not material ways, but also acts of kindness, understanding, and support. Chief Executive Officer of Catholic Charities Counseling and Adoption Services, Dr. Don Colburn-Joy, and Director of the Office of Social Service and Impact at Catholic Charities of the Diocese of Erie, Diane Gallagher. Thank you both for joining me on Breakfast with Nat the Hat in the 814. How grateful to have these important services in the 814 community. Thank you for coming on today. And everybody stay cool and stay tuned. Up next, we got the Polka Show with Bob and Alice. And everybody, make it a great week in the 814.
You've been tuned in to Breakfast with Nat the Hat in the 814, sponsored by Erie Insurance on 88.5 and 102.7 LECOM Radio.